Hello everyone and welcome to my channel. This is the 39th part of What If Deku Had a Robot Wolf. I hope you enjoy. Link to the original story and author in the description. Chapter 39, let's start things off. Tensei Ida, also known as Ingenium, stood in his hero costume in the main lobby of his agency, waiting for his news intern to finish getting settled in. In all honesty, he didn't expect to have Izumi select him to intern with. He half expected her to choose Daidoji, Gurin or Mirko if the latter sent her an internship. But, after she told her why she chose him, he understood why she chose here. This new aspect of her quirk was right up his alley. Speed was his forte after all. Plus she called this new technique gearshift, and if there was one thing he knew about, it was how gears worked. Rolls had already arrived a few minutes ago, wearing her school uniform. He didn't understand why CI students wear their school uniforms as hero costumes, but some schools had uniform requirements for their hero students, preventing them from wearing helmets for protection. Shiketsu, for instance, requires all of its students to wear their caps alongside their hero costumes, and Seijin requires all of its students to wear highly colorized ninja outfits, not allowing them to design their own until they graduate. At least UA didn't do that. He really would not have been able to do half the stuff he did whilst wearing a cap. Wouldn't have even been able to wear his armor. It was then that Izumi walked into the lobby, wearing her hero costume, with Durandal as well as another girl with dirty blonde hair tied into two messy buns. Ah, that must be Himiko, Native's intern. He almost forgot she would be staying here as well. Hey Izumi. Nice costume you have there, Tensei said with a smile, very sturdy looking. Thank you, Izumi beamed as she walked over. My mother made it for me. And no, she doesn't work for a costume design company. Your mother made that? Rolls remarked, I must admit, she's made quite the functional and protective costume there. Himiko suddenly glared at Rolls. Oh. You're from CI Academy, aren't you? Indeed I am, Rolls said with a frown. I take it you're not a fan of the school? It's the school my parents wanted me to attend, Himiko spat. They said it was a proper school for proper, normal, girls. Proper school for Rolls said sounding confused. What the fuck were your parents smoking? Did they forget that Mirko and Vernon went through CI's hero track? And those two are not proper ladies, not by a long shot. CI does not teach you how to be a lady, trust me, they do nothing of the sort, she explained. Okay, so they do teach us some discipline. But it's not as strict as some places like Shiketsu. If it was, the teachers there would tell me to curb my love for S&M. What? Himiko said with a confused look on her face whilst a blush started to form on Izumi's, which was quickly covered when the girl pulled down her hood. Oh, now the bunny comments make sense, Tensei thought as he noticed the ears on Izumi's costume. What, I like my partners how I like my books. Well read and bound in leather. What's wrong with that? Rolls said with a shrug. Besides, one of my classmates has a quick that basically allows her to create and control bondage equipment, and she was allowed in. And don't get me started on the girls from my sister's class, because oh boy, they're all busty as hell. Izumi was glad that she had her hood up because her blush was atomic. Oh god, she's worse than Midnight, she thought in a panic. Just her luck that she runs into a telepath who's into S&M. Fuck, she could probably easily tell what someone's interests are. Damn it, she could probably grope someone with her mind too. You're right, what were my parents smoking? Himiko said. That doesn't sound anything like they said it was. Damn, now I'm pissed. CI sounds like fun. Izumi sighed. She should probably not mention that. If she failed to get into UA, CI Academy was backup choice. If the girls at UA weren't the end of her, then by the sounds of things, the girls at the all-girls school of CI Academy definitely would be. Anyway, Tensei said, getting everyone's attention. Yusako, this will be your first ever patrol, so you'll be patrolling with me. Redcoat, you'll be with Anam Yushinya and Zookeeper today. I'm sorry, Redcoat? Durandal said, looking at Rolls. That's your hero name. What? I'm British and proud of it. Rolls said proudly as the Union Jack was raised behind her, somehow. Looking to the side of her, they saw a girl with white hair and eyes, wearing a black and red buttoned outfit with white gloves and black boots, holding the flag. She also had a broom on her back. So who's the girl with the broom? Himiko asked. Oh, her. She's Zookeeper, one of my sidekicks, Tensei replied, whilst the girl, Zookeeper, waved. We rescued her a few years back after a villain brainwashed her. She's been working here ever since. Don't worry, the villain responsible for brainwashing her was arrested. Well, that's good to hear, Izumi said with a smile, glad that Zookeeper had been freed from the villain's control. Can't have been a nice experience being under someone else's control. Oh, should I have Durandal switch to armored wolf mode? Tensei nodded. Yep. If you want to learn how to fight in that mode, you will have to get used to wearing him. A good hour or two should help with that. Right, Izumi said before turning towards Durandal. Durandal, activate armored wolf mode. Roger. Durandal replied before activating armored wolf mode, reforming around Izumi as a suit of armor. Do you really trust that robot? Rolls asked, looking nervous at the sight of Durandal splitting open and enveloping Izumi's body. I trust him with my life, Izumi replied. You don't trust robots? Himiko asked. Yeah, I've never really trusted them, Rolls replied. You can never tell what they're thinking. My quirk doesn't work on them. Well, the telepathy part, that is. Can't read the mind of a machine now, can I? That was odd. Eri could read Durandal's thoughts, yet Rolls here said that she couldn't. Did she really not have powers like Eri? Or were they different? Something to figure out later. Anyway, Yusako, with me, Tensei said as he put his helmet on and waved for Izumi to follow him. Zookeeper, Redcoat. Anam, you should be down in a minute or two. I'll stay here and wait for Native, Himiko said as she walked to one side of the room. Have fun out there, Izumi. Izumi blushed slightly as she walked out with Tensei and onto the streets of Hosu. Now remember, Yusako, we use hero names whilst on duty. So, please refer to me as Ingenium whilst we're on patrol. Understood, Izumi replied with a nod as she headed out on her first ever patrol. So, small question. Why are we immediately going on a patrol? Durandal asked as they stepped out of the agency. Isn't it a bit too soon to be doing something like this? I want both of you to get used to moving around in armored wolf mode, so an immediate patrol will help with that, Tensei replied. Plus I like to give my interns a tour around Hosu, just so they have a better idea of what the area's like. Izumi nodded as they continued to walk. It didn't take them long before they reached a densely populated area, and she was surprised by how much deference people were showing them. You okay, Yusako? Tensei asked. I'm fine, Izumi replied. It's just that, is it always like this? Tensei nodded. Yep. When people see a hero on the streets, even if it's not one they know, they feel safe. It's why we're here after all, he explained. It's a lot of trust to put onto someone you don't know, but that's why we're here, to earn that trust, he said. When a villain attacks, people need to know that they'll be safe whilst they're running away from the fight. Not stand around and watch like they used to do before the Avalon War. Izumi nodded. During the early days of the Avalon War, people just assumed the early attacks were just normal villain attacks and stood around and watched as the heroes fought a bunch of armed robots. It didn't take long before those robots turned their guns on the people watching. Since then, people have been advised to move away from villain attacks, to avoid such a thing happening again. It took the fun out of watching the fights away, but it was a safety precaution. A lot of things changed in the wake of the Avalon War, some good, others bad. It did not take long before they had people coming over to them for selfies. Izumi especially got a lot of attention due to being the winner of the first-year sports festival. Wearing Durandal didn't make her any less noticeable due to her having worn him during the festival, plus there was the large, fluffy green ponytail hanging out the back because there was no way her helmet could contain her mess of hair. So she stood out. Well, Durandal did say that she should probably get used to this kind of thing. But she had hoped to deal with it gradually, not get dumped into the deep end and have a large number of people crowding around wanting selfies and autographs. Well, now she knows what it's like to be on the other end. It was an exhausting first patrol. She wasn't able to see much of the area due to how many people came up to them. Still, she was worried. Not about herself, but about Eri. The young girl, who had basically become her little sister, would be spending a full week without her, and she was one of the few people she felt safe around. She could only hope that Eri would be alright without her. Eri sat in one of the corners of the UA daycare, alone, snuggling up to her personal Durandal plush. She was scared. Her big sis wasn't around. She said that she had to leave for a week for a work study so that she can learn how to become a better hero from already established pros. She knew why Izumi and Durandal needed to go, but she couldn't help but feel worried about them. Kai was still out there, and she didn't know if Izumi was strong enough to face him. She remembered how many times that man had torn her apart and put her back together, each time more painful than the last. It was like he was putting her back together incorrectly, like a jigsaw puzzle, but with most of the pieces forced into the wrong position. She kept her distance from the others. She didn't want to accidentally use her curse on them, despite the many times Blossom told her that everything would be fine and that she didn't have anything to worry about. The danger was still there. She liked Blossom, her tails were fluffy after all, but she wasn't as comforting as Inko was. Whilst the two women's voices were nice, Blossom had hidden voices, whispers even. The women's voices were strange. Off-putting even. The woman acted kind and caring, but she could tell that there was something else to her. There was a cold and mature personality behind that mask. There was something else as well, something hidden deep within her. A beast, armored in steel and covered in pipes of different sizes. It was almost like a dash. "Hey," a young voice said to her, bringing her back to reality. Eri looked up and saw a young boy, about her age, with short spiky black hair and a red hat with two golden spike-shaped horns on the front. He was wearing a white shirt and black shorts. "Are you alright?" the boy asked. Eri looked up at him confused. She could tell the boy was concerned, the voices said so. His voices also seemed conflicted. Some were angry, some were sad. It was like he was at war with himself over something. What that was she couldn't tell. The voices weren't telling her. "I'm alright," Eri said as she curled up into the corner, wanting to be left alone. "Oh, I see," Kota said with a frown, which surprised Eri. Most people are surprised when she talks to them like this, but he seemed fine with it. "Why? Why, aren't you surprised?" Eri asked, looking back up at him. "My auntie has a quirk that allows her to speak telepathically to people," Kota replied, "so I'm kind of used to it." "Still, why are you only speaking into my mind?" "My vocal cords were removed," Eri replied quietly. Her lack of social understanding meant that she didn't know that this wasn't something she should be telling a 5-year-old. "He wanted me to stop crying." Kota's eyes shot wide open as tears started to form around his eyes. A villain removed this girl's vocal cords just to stop her from crying. What kind of monster would do such a thing? He shot forwards and hugged Eri, tears falling from his eyes. "I'm so sorry," he cried. How could someone do something like that to a cute, innocent girl like Eri? He knew he was only 5 years old, but he wished death, a painfully slow death too, upon those responsible for hurting Eri. He was going to find one of those guys who saved his parents, ask them to find whoever hurt Eri, and have them do what they did to Muscular, to the bastard who hurt her. No mercy was going to be shown to whoever hurt Eri. Eri meanwhile was just confused. The other kids here kept their distance from her when she told them what happened to her, but Kota didn't. Why was that? After a few moments, Kota asked, "Would it be okay if I sit with you a while?" Eri was confused. Even though Kota's voices were telling her he was worried about her, she didn't understand why he wanted to stay with her. Shouldn't he be keeping his distance due to her curse? After a few confused moments, Eri replied, "Oh, okay." Kota nodded and sat down beside her. They sat down in silence. Neither of them spoke, but Eri could hear the boys' voices. They were worried about her, but also about 2 other people, but they were so confused that she couldn't tell who else his worry was aimed at. She knew that she should tell him to leave her alone, it just wasn't safe around her, not with her curse. But a part of her didn't want him to leave. So, she sat there with him for a while, only leaving when Inko came to pick her up. Later that day, Eri was sitting on one of the beds in Recovery Girls Clinic. The school nurse was doing some tests on her. There was a short old man in there as well who called himself Gran Torino. As well as Inko and Eraserhead. do I have to be here for this? Gran Torino, his left arm in a cast. I'm perfectly dash, he said before Recovery Girl attacked his shins with her cane. You wouldn't be here if you didn't insist on flying around the place. Recovery Girl said, sounding annoyed. You old Ulf. Seriously, you're as bad as that buffoon All Might sometimes. She said before she walked back over to Eri. Apologies about that, dear. Some people just can't look after their bodies. Don't worry, you'll be fine. These tests are just to check that your body is healthy. Nothing to worry about. Eri nodded. Oh, okay, she said. She didn't like these tests, but Inko said that they were for her own good. She trusted Inko, her voices spoke the truth. Don't worry, Eri, it'll be alright, Inko said reassuringly. I'll be right outside if you need me, she said before she and Shota left the room. Once they were outside and the door closed, Inko turned towards Shota. Why must she go through these tests? She's already been through so much already. Her abilities are unnatural, Shota replied. Her quirk is dangerous and she lacks control over it, plus her telepathy being unrelated to her quirk is concerning. We have no idea where these abilities came from. We hope these tests we're running can help us understand how she got them. You don't just develop powers like that at birth, it's far too early for a quirk to develop. Inko nodded. Her psionic powers were indeed a mystery. Have they found anything so far? Well, nothing much, apart from her lack of appendix, Shota replied. She doesn't have an appendix? Inko said, sounding confused. What's an appendix? Shota let out a tired sigh. I'd ask why you don't know what that is, but since I didn't know what the appendix was until I had to have it removed, I don't blame you. It's a small, thin pouch connected to the large intestine, and it's utterly useless. And Eri doesn't have 1 inch. Oh, Inko said, sounding worried. Was it removed? No, she flat out never had one, Shota replied. If she had it, there would be signs of it being removed, and I doubt the man who took her vocal cords away wouldn't remove her appendix unless he needed to. No, Eri was flat out born without 1 inch. Now that was indeed odd. If all humans were born with an appendix, then why was Eri lacking one? There's something else too. That kid is smart for a 5-year-old, Shota added, and I mean smart. Despite having spent an unknown amount of time in captivity, she is grasping new concepts shockingly quickly. Well, I don't think that's all that strange, Inko said. My Izumi was a quick learner as well. Inko, a 5-year-old should not be able to read and understand complex medical textbooks or Nizu's books on military theory and politics, Shota said with an extremely tired look on his face. I dare not ask how she got her hands on those books, but that girl is, academically, 10 years ahead of everyone else her age. Maybe even more dash. They were brought out of this conversation by a loud psychic cry, as well as the door to the infirmary smashing open. The door came loose and embedded itself into the opposing wall. Shota quickly rushed into the room and activated his quirk. The glow stopped and Eri collapsed, but the damage had been done. Anything not nailed down had been thrown away from her, and Recovery Girl and Gran Torino were nowhere to be seen. Oh God! Inko gasped at the sight. It looked like the Hulk had smashed the room up. She must have forced everything away with her telekinesis, Shota remarked as he walked towards one of the piles. You check on Eri. Inko nodded as she rushed over to Eri. The young girl was asleep, thank God, but the damage around her was shocking. Some of the beds were bent in half, and there was so much equipment thrown around that it would be a miracle if no one was hit by it all. Chio, where are you? Shota said loudly as he looked through the debris to search for the school nurse. I'm alive. No need to shout. A female voice shouted, followed by a young woman climbing out of the ruins and falling onto the floor. Fuck. Where the hell is my cane? You are, Chio. I don't think you need your cane, Shota remarked, a surprised look on his face as he stood over the woman. What are you babbling on about, man? The woman shouted. Stop standing there and help me out. I'm too old to get up on my own. I don't think old suits you anymore, Shota said before he picked up a shattered piece of mirror and showed it to her. What? The woman said before she looked at the broken mirror and saw a part of a face she hadn't seen in over 50 or 60 years. What the hell? She gasped as she looked at the mirror. She was looking at her face, yes, but it was her face from years and years ago. She was 30 again. Okay, this is going to take some getting used to, Recovery Girl said as she looked herself over. She was taller now, the wrinkles of old age were gone, replaced by smooth skin. The color had returned to her hair and was now a light, silvery blue. Her uniform was torn in places and was very short on her. Which made sense, it wasn't designed for her at this size. Plus her chest felt very uncomfortable since her noticeable sized bust had returned. Well, there goes her retirement plan. Ah well, someone's got to keep the kids from killing themselves, might as well be her. You are, guys. A little help over here? A male voice said loudly. I'm pinned to the ground by a bed. Shota quickly started moving furniture off of Gran Torino, eventually uncovering him. Like Recovery Girl, he too had been affected by Eri's quirk. You alright? Shota asked as he held out his hands towards the elderly pro. I'll live, Gran Torino said as Shota helped him up. Wow. You've shrunk. No, you've gotten taller, Shota replied with a tired look on his face, before he brought up the mirror fragment and showed it to Gran. Why, I'll be damned, I'm young again, Gran Torino marveled as he looked at himself in the mirror shard. His beard was gone, as well as his wrinkles. His hair was still gray and short, and his well-built physique had returned to him. Of course, his uniform was ripped to shreds. The small costume was not designed to cover such a large body. Well, there goes that retirement bet I had with All Might. Oh well, at least that bet about outliving that fool Tornado Lord. Shame it was over a bottle of wine. I take it this was what you looked like when you were 30. Shota remarked. Gran Torino nodded. Looks like it. Huh, looks like I will be taking that teaching position after all, he said before a sly grin appeared on his face. Oh, I am going to enjoy my next meeting with Toshinori. Well, it's nice to see that you're both okay, but what happened? Inko asked, inquiring as to how Eri suddenly lost control of her quirk again. I was taking a blood sample when Eri suddenly screamed. Recovery Girl replied. I guess she thought I was this overhaul bastard trying to take her blood again. I swear if I ever meet him I'm healing him to death. Get in line, Gran Torino said. If I get my hands on him I'm showing him what it feels like to be hit by a Category 10 hurricane. 20 if I get the Tornado Lord in on it. Man's always had a soft spot for kids. I don't care who gets to him first, Shota said, but I will say that I will be there to make sure he doesn't use his quirk. Good, Recovery Girl said with a smile. Anyway, I'm putting both myself and Gran Torino on medical leave. Not only have we become 50 years younger, but we're also much taller than we were a few hours ago. We'll need to get used to being young again. Also, we may suffer from body dysmorphia as a result of this, so have hound dog ready. Agreed, Gran Torino said, it's going to be difficult getting used to being this young and tall again. All Might suddenly barged into the room. Is everyone alright? Horiguramo said. Eri's quirk went dash only to go pure white when he spotted Gran Torino. Oh, hey Toshinori, Gran Torino said with a casual smile. Guess I'm canceling that chiropractor appointment. All Might had never left a room faster. Inko couldn't help but smirk at Toshinori's reaction. She still hadn't fully forgiven the man for what he did to her daughter, probably never will. But, unlike everyone else who had hurt Izumi, he was at least trying to make amends. She looked back down at Eri, who was sleeping peacefully. The use of her quirk exhausted her. Eri, don't you worry, I'll protect you. Argonaut was many things, a killer, soldier, murderer, hell, he even pretended to love someone just so he could get close to her master and kill him. Unfortunately, he was not very good at dealing with problems of his own creation, that being the woman who he pretended to love just so that he could kill her master. Barrows. One of Humori's most devoted members. And one of the few people who was an actuarial threat to him. And now he had to meet with her because apparently she contacted the writer for some reason, and wanted to meet with someone. Annoying, that someone was him. This was going to end in a fucking bloodbath. Luckily he had robots to back him up. Clade wasn't all that dangerous of a nation, it was the neighboring nation that worried him, Atheon. It's smaller than Clade, yes, but it's also home to Humorize, a bunch of religious nutjobs who want to rid the world of quirks. R's holes. He very much liked his quirk. It was very useful when fighting someone in close combat. It was also home to that bitch Clairvoyance, a very annoying woman who was right next to Barrows in the list of people who were a danger to him, and not because of her quirk. And he was on an island with both of those people. Fun. Another fun thing was the point for the rendezvous with Barrows, a forest on the border of the two nations, in the middle of the night. Which were his preferred conditions for killing someone, that is, if he wasn't sitting in the middle of a fucking clearing. At least the robots were holding position in the tree line. He thankfully didn't have to wait long for Barrows to arrive, with the woman walking past the opposing tree line. She was an athletically built woman with short mint green hair and sharp eyes of the same color. She was wearing a gray sleeveless combat suit and boots, a mask, and a green hooded cape with a hood. But where was her quiver? Oh, you have got to be fucking kidding me. Barrows spat as she noticed who was waiting for her. Of all the people the writer had to send to pick me up, it had to be you. Argonaut shrugged as he stood up. Yeah, sorry to disappoint you, but I was the closest guy here, so here I am. I'm not exactly happy to be here, you know. You're not happy to be here. Barrows shouted, hatred in her eyes, as she walked over. You used me. You pretended to love me only so that you could get close to the only father figure I had, and kill him. You broke my heart, and left me for fucking dead with shrapnel in my head. I spent 2 years in a fucking loony bin whilst my brain unscrambled itself. And now I have to rely on your lying, manipulative ass to get me off this island. She fumed. You are fucking lucky that I don't have any ammunition for my bow right now, otherwise I would have pined you to a fucking tree. I'd like to see you try, Argonaut said as the squad of striders walked out of the tree line, guns raised and pointed directly at Barrows. Barrows scoffed. Avalon robots. Still working for that lot, I see. Even though Paxton's dead. Avalon's still around, Argonaut said smugly, even if the head honcho himself isn't around to lead it. Anyway, what's going down in Quirk Hater Town? Last I heard you guys were planning the end of all quirks. Later, Barrows growled as she walked past him. Just get me the hell out of here before she said before all the robots around them were suddenly disassembled by some invisible force. Oh, you are fucking kidding me. Argonaut quickly took on a defensive stance, shield in front of him and spear aimed at the opposing tree line, where someone was walking towards them. Someone wearing Hummerized robes walked out into the clearing, his face covered by a mask made from okay, this man was wearing a mask made from human skin. He was dealing with one of those guys. Great. Okay, mister, I'm wearing human skin on my face, Argonaut said. Who the fuck are you? I am just here to retrieve what is mine, the man said calmly. His voice was eerie, not quiet, just eerie. That didn't answer my question, Argonaut said, sounding annoyed, but keeping his guard up. This man clearly was the one who destroyed his robots. And I don't need to, the man said. You know resistance is futile, I can end this as easily as a finger snap. He's not lying, Barrows added. I've seen him kill every quirkless member of Hummerized by snapping their necks. With his mind. Argonaut kept his stance but glanced towards one of the disassembled robots. Okay, so the fucker was humoring him. Bastard. But, to kill every quirkless member of Hummerized? What the hell was going on there? You killed all your quirkless members. Why? Don't you guys worship quirkless people as pure or something like that? The old Hummerized was like that, yes, the man said, but Fleck Turn has decided to take us down a different path, a greater path, and he requires his most loyal followers to help him. Shut your trap about Fleck Turn being in charge, Barrows spat. If looks could kill, she could have killed an army with the glare she was giving the man. He's just a puppet now. Been one ever since your master showed up and mind-controlled everyone. I'm still loyal to Hummerized, yes, but not the Hummerized you've turned it into. Mind control, huh? Argonaut said with a smirk as he noticed something move beneath the man's feet. Well, as much as would like to ask about this new management and this new, greater path, you're not going to last long enough, tell me, he said just before a massive swarm of microscopic insects swarmed the man and started to consume him, alive. Huh, well that was easy, Argonaut remarked over the man's screams. Barely an inconvenience, he said with a smile, but silently admitting that he had got lucky this time. That man was clearly humoring him. He made it quite clear that he could have snapped his neck as easily as he took the robots apart. The swarm quickly finished devouring the man, much to Barrow's horror, leaving behind the man's clothing and skeleton. The swarm then moved away from the man's remains and started to form together into a person, a tall woman with green skin. "You're lucky we came along with you," Halala said as she fully reformed into a human and walked over to them. "Completely but naked, you would not have survived a fight with that man." "Considering he could have snapped my neck with a thought, yeah, I doubt I would have," Argonaut said. He wasn't a fool, he knew all too well that there were quirks out there that could easily be used to kill him. He was still mortal after all, still, Hamarize under new management. "This is concerning." "It is," Barrows added. "Now let's get out of here before one of this guy's friends shows up. There are 4 of them, by the way, all with the exact same quirk." "Well, 3 now thanks to her," she said, pointing at Halala. "Seriously, woman, put some clothes on." "Why?" Halala asked with a smile. "We see nothing wrong with a little nudity. Also, Grigory's. If you do anything you did to Barrows here to us, we'll eat you alive." Slowly. "Duly noted," Argonaut said before he turned and headed towards the forest. No way he wanted to risk backstabbing a woman who could devour a man in seconds. "Now then, let's get the hell out of here." Halala was quick to follow. Barrows, however, wasn't. She was reluctant to follow the man who killed her mentor and almost killed her, but it was better than being at Hamarize. Especially after the new management gutted the entire organization and were now using it for their own ends. If only she wasn't the only one immune to their mind control. "So, what exactly is going on with Hamarize?" Argonaut asked as they walked through the forest. "Who's this new management and what are they doing?" "Just get me out of here first, then I'll tell you what's going on," Barrows replied. "No point telling you anything if we don't get out of here safely." "Right," Argonaut said, sounding annoyed as they walked deeper into the forest. Walking in silence before they reached a large robot that looked more like a flying bunker. "Ah, here he is, BNK3R. Isn't that one of Mechanist's creations?" Barrows asked. "Yes it is," Argonaut replied. "Why are you using it?" Barrows asked. "Don't you hate that guy?" "Yes, I do," Argonaut replied. "So the less time spent inside that thing, the better." Now, don't be too hard on it," Halala said. "We helped make BNK3R after all. It's as much our creation as it is Mechanist's." "Right, I keep forgetting you were Avalon's second best robot designer." Bearing Paxton himself, Argonaut said as they approached BNK3R, its loading ramp lowered. Barrows sighed. "I hate this dash," she said before she was suddenly hit by a pulse blast, causing her to collapse. Shit. Argonaut cursed as he quickly rushed to cover behind a tree as the air around him was suddenly filled with pulse blasts. "Ambush!" he shouted before he looked out behind the tree. A good distance away he saw several combat robots firing at them with pulse rifles, the blasts they were firing set to stun. The robots were painted Stormtrooper white with the WHA logo on their chest plates. Which meant that, yes, the other annoying bitch who called this island home was here as well. Clairvoyance. Fuck. Oh, and she had that flying squirrel sidekick of hers as well. Double FUCK. Because annoyingly he's allergic to squirrel hair. Clairvoyance was a curvy woman with blue eyes that had a visor with blue-tinted lenses over them, and straight blonde hair with a brown patch stemming from her roots. She wore a form-fitting royal blue suit with a wide opening in the chest area as well as the WHA logo on the sleeves, with the space being taken up by a high-collared white dress shirt. As well as black thigh-high boots. Honestly, in another world, he would not mind getting a lap dance from the woman. Unfortunately, she wasn't a stripper, she was a hero, and an annoying one at that too. So, she needed to die. Which was a problem since he was currently pinned down by gunfire. Now normally this wouldn't be a problem, his quirk, Enhanced Reflexes, allows him to dodge gunfire easily. As long as he's in an open space with zero cover. If he is somewhere that has things you can hide behind like, say, a forest full of trees, shit starts to get complicated. You see, his quirk has a few weaknesses. 1. He needs to be aware of the threat in the first place to be able to dodge it, and 2. His quirk automatically moves his body to best avoid the incoming attack. Now this isn't much of a problem until you throw in guns and cover, because his quirk will choose the best option to avoid the incoming gunfire. And, in this case, the best course of action was to hide behind a tree. In clear open terrain he could easily have rushed forwards and dealt with them himself, but in a forest full of trees his quirk was screwing him over. And thanks to that psychic git from earlier he had no combat robots to shoot back. Well, there was BNK3R, but, for some reason, Mechanist, in his infinite wisdom, decided to not give BNK3R weapons. Well, it did have weapons, air-to-air missiles, and nothing else. For something that's supposed to be a flying bunker, it sure is lacking in guns. Oh, don't worry, they're mine, Hilala said, smiling with glee before she deformed into a swarm and swarmed forwards. The small size of the swarm made noticing it impossible. Only for the robots to start firing incendiary grenades at them. Incendiary grenades! Argonaut gasped as the area around them went up in flames. Why the hell do they have incendiary grenades? To deal with me! Hilala shouted, from inside BNK3R, having retreated very quickly the moment the incendiaries started detonating. We do not do well against fire. You know that. To deal with, you? Argonaut said, sounding confused. How the hell did Clairvoyance know that Hilala was with him? Oh, right, he'd spent the past 5 years running around the world killing heroes alongside her. So of course she would plan for her being here. Bugger. He quickly took stock of the situation. Clairvoyance had them pinned. He was stuck behind a tree because his quick said it was the safest place for him to be. BNK3R was useless. Hilala couldn't come out unless she wanted to become a pile of cooked bugs, and Barrows was stunned and unable to do anything. This was why he hated Clairvoyance. During their 5 previous encounters, that bitch always knew how to screw him over and force him into situations where he's at a disadvantage. It was only thanks to a little piece of tech he liked to call quirk suppression bracelets that he was able to get out of those. Which he only had because he needed a way to get out of dangerous situations when his quirk was being fucky with him. He quickly activated the quirk suppression bracelets and ran towards BNK3R. He was sadly going to have to leave Barrows behind, as despite the operation being meant to recover her, there was no way he could drag her onto BNK3R whilst under this much fire. Not when he knew that Paxton was back. If he got caught, it would only be a matter of time before someone got him to talk. He was going to have words with Mechanist once he gets back about putting proper guns on this thing. BNK3R, get us the fuck out of here, Argonaut ordered as he rushed on board. BNK3R quickly complied and closed the loading ramp and took off. Under heavy fire from the robots. Not that their pulse rifles could damage it. Well, good news, we know something's going on with Hummereyes, Hilala said as BNK3R floated up over the tree line and flew away at speed. Bad news, we didn't escape with Barrows, who could have told us exactly what was going on. There was no way we could extract her, not with that many robots shooting at us, Argonaut said, if only this thing had guns on it. Sorry about that, BNK3R was never designed to engage targets itself, only provide a safe space for troops to fire out of, Hilala said. Argonaut shook his head. Well, nothing we can do about it now. Anyway, we know Hummereyes is under new management, and they got rid of all their Quirkless members. But why? And who's powerful enough to take over all of Hummereyes? We don't know, Hilala replied. Nonetheless, we should tell Paxton about this. This could be a problem for us later down the line. Yeah, let's do that, Argonaut said as he walked over to the controls. Yes, it was disappointing that they couldn't extract Barrows with them, but it was probably for the best. He didn't want someone like her lurking around the Ark now, did he? Meanwhile, back down in the forest, Barrows groaned. Her head hurt, as did everything else. Those pulse blasts hurt like hell, and was that the sound of something flying away? She rolled over onto her back and looked up, and saw several robots standing over her pointing pulse rifles at her. As well as the pro-hero Clairvoyance. Oh, that fucking Greek bastard! She growled as she put her hands above her head and submitted to the heroes, offering no resistance as they arrested her. She should have known that Argonaut would have left her for dead the moment shit hit the fan. She was so going to kill him the next time they met. Meanwhile, back in the clearing, A cloaked figure stood over the skeletal remains of the man that had been pursuing Barrows. The figure waved a hand over the remains, reducing them to atoms and leaving nothing behind. 2 down, 7 to go. That will be it for this part. I hope everyone enjoyed. If you did, please leave a like and comment if you want part 40. If you want to hear more from me, subscribe. I hope to see you all in the next one.